The following program, NORML Show Live, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate for the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate or encourage any illegal activity and advise all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws by visiting norml.org, NORML.org. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers of NORML Show Live are their own and do not necessarily reflect the philosophy and policies of NORML. Listener discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think we need to think and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws presents NORML Show Live, Marijuana Nation. Now, here's your host, NORML's Outreach Coordinator, Radical Russ Belville.
Good afternoon, tokers and tokettes. It is Thursday, March 10th, 2011, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us here. We're going to have a good time on today's show. We are celebrating Mardi Gras here. More on that in just a second. Before we get too far into it, let's introduce the pirate, the maestro, the engineer, Ganja John.
What's up, Russ?
Oh, man, we're going to have a good time today. Can you feel it?
I can feel it.
You may notice that Ganja John is wearing some beads.
I am.
He showed me his boobs earlier.
I did.
No. I gotta tell you, folks, and also let's bring in our own cannabis carrier in Astoria, Oregon. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, guys. You guys look pretty good for a lean Thursday.
No doubt. And we've got, there's another set of beads here for you, Carrie. I got this letter. We got a package, and let me get this here.
I'm not showing my boobs.
You're not showing your boobs, okay.
Not even a Ganja John?
Radical Russ,
maybe
Ganja John, and Cannabis Carrie. We're tired of hearing about all the unusual packages being sent from the West Coast that end up here in the South, so we decided to flip the script. There really is no way to properly thank y'all, they spelled out y'all, for all the hard work you do every day. However, we hope these Mardi Gras beads and a box of moon pies gives you some idea of how much your efforts are truly appreciated. Yes, the moon pies are also thrown from the floats during parades and have an almost magical quality in their ability to satisfy even the most demanding case of the munchies. Laissez le bon temps rouler. Tony and Lori Zappia from Cannabis States of America podcast.
I love it.
That is sweet.
Yes.
Hey, are those the moon pies that have the little tiny babies inside of them that you can choke on?
Yeah, sure.
You don't know what I'm talking about,
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, they make these like king cakes in Mardi Gras, and they bake a little tiny plastic baby in the middle.
Ah.
Baking in plastic doesn't sound like it's good to go.
Yeah.
This reminds me of...
Sorry, I apologize to all my Southern brothers and sisters who are saying she does not know what she's talking about.
You know, this reminds me of the oven baby, right?
Yes.
So Rio says they're called king cakes, but moon pie is totally another thing.
There we go. And it was funny that we got this package just on the day that I had been, castigated for, hating on the South. We get this from the Southerners. So thanks, Tony and Lori. And also Herb Thrasher. He's originally from Alabama. And he tweeted to let me know that if we got moon pies and beads, next we got to get some RC Cola. So we'll have the whole Southern thing. Get some boiled peanuts. We'll be set. All right, let's get to things here on today's show. Lots of stuff coming up. Today is John Doe Radio and the Groovin' Thursday music. Pace One and Mr. Green are back in the house. Joining us in studio from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, former probation officer Shelley Fox Loken will be talking to us in our Cops Say Legalized Drugs segment. And at the end of the show, we're speaking with Sharon Neufer from Ohio NORML. She's in a battle. She's stuck in Lodi again. They're in Lodi, Ohio, having kind of a battle with the mayor there. We'll talk to her all about that. But before we get to all of that, we do our hemp headlines with Cannabis. Carrie, what do we got in the news today?
Well, we've got great news today. What a great Thursday. We've got some news out of Illinois that's going to make medical marijuana advocates thrilled. An odd case of Dr. Chronic. And also we're going to go to Hawaii, where their senator just blew me away this week, and we're going to talk about that too.
All right. Great stuff coming up on today's show. Please stick around. And also, don't forget, Hour 2, Toker Talk Radio will be here taking your calls and just chatting for the second hour of our show. Also, coming up on Monday, a surprise, a beta test, if you will, of the fledgling NORML network. We'll talk more about that in Hour 2. Stick around.
You're listening to NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
In today's busy world, we're inundated by advertising for all types of pharmaceuticals that come with a laundry list of potential side effects. Shouldn't you have better medical choices? Natural alternatives to pills pushed by Big Pharma? At Alternative Medical Choices, you could choose natural, safe, and effective alternative therapies that are right for your budget without nasty side effects. Cannabis, or marijuana, has been a legal medicine in the Pacific Northwest since 1998. Our doctors will help determine your qualifications for a medical marijuana recommendation in Oregon, no matter where you live. Our massage therapists will ease your aches and stress with soothing hemp seed oil or cannabis-infused massage salves. We also offer acupuncture, Reiki, and other alternative health therapies. Call Alternative Medical Choices in Portland, Oregon at 503-288-5579 or visit our website at www.altmedchoices.com. We specialize in out-of-state recommendations. That's www.altmedchoices.com or call 503-288-5579.
NORML National Conference 2011, Denver, Colorado, April 21st through 23rd.
I'm not a crook.
When President Nixon declared war on marijuana smokers, NORML was founded by a young lawyer named Keith Stroup. And now, in our 40th year, NORML is coming of age as states begin discussing outright marijuana legalization.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Join us in Denver, Colorado, the day after 420 for our 40th annual national conference. You'll learn about marijuana law, cannabis science, and the grassroots activism necessary to end prohibition. Set in the Mile High City, America's cannabis capital. Special guests include medical marijuana pioneer and Harvard emeritus Dr. Lester Grinspoon, U.S. Congressman Jared Polis, and NORML founder Keith Stroup. NORML National Conference 2011, coming of age in Denver, Colorado, April 21st through 23rd. It's the true Rocky Mountain High.
Medical marijuana, industrial hemp, consumer cannabis. It's time for this week's NORML News with Cannabis Carrie.
Illinois is one step closer to a House vote on medical marijuana today. The Illinois House and the Human Services Committee, who had been reviewing House Bill 30, the Compassionate Use of Medical Cannabis Pilot Program Act, have voted to approve it. It was a tight vote, coming down to 6 pass onto the House and 5 to table the legislation. Illinois House Bill 30 would allow qualified patients suffering from chronic pain and debilitating medical conditions such as hepatitis C, HIV, AIDS, and cancer to possess 2.5 ounces of medical marijuana for a 14-day period in which the need has been certified, and in some cases by 2 separate doctors. The Illinois Department of Health would administer the program, including issuing identification cards to patients that would allow them to purchase medical marijuana at nonprofit dispensaries or to cultivate up to 6 plants at home or in the home of a specified caregiver. House Bill 30 is sponsored by Representatives Lou Lang, State Representative Angelo Saviano, and State Representative Ann Williams. It will now be put on a calendar for a second reading and an open debate in the House. If House Bill 30 manages to pass the House and Senate, Governor Pat Quinn has said he would consider signing the legislation if it reaches his desk. As always, we will keep you posted.
All right. Well, that's some good news, although a squeaker coming out of there at a 6-5 vote. Note that this is a pilot program that they're talking about. What this would do is they would initiate this program, but it would have a sunset clause in it. And so it would go away after a few years if they didn't vote to keep it. That's kind of that cautious step they're taking now to make sure that these things work out the way they want them to. I am pleased to see that they have home cultivation in this, home cultivation and dispensaries. That's it's, the perfect solution. Well, not perfect. The perfect solution is legalization, but it's as good as we're going to get in a medical marijuana law here. And I'm just looking over the text here from the Illinois House here, and I think this is also one of these bills that has some of those newfound protections we're seeing in the bills, where they protect transplant rights and housing rights and your child custody, and you're not automatically DUI if you have metabolites, these kind of things. I'll get some more data on that and make sure that we post that up on the Stash blog at stash.normal.org.
And a medical doctor pleaded guilty today in a New Jersey courtroom for growing 58 marijuana plants in his home. Edwin Bliss Struve, a non-practicing physician who is board certified in internal medicine, told Superior Court Judge David Ironson that he has been cultivating marijuana since he came home from the Army in 1968. The now 63-year-old admitted that he smoked 30 joints a day and was not getting much else done before his arrest. Police went to his Chatham, New Jersey home last year on April 29th to see if he would consent to a mental health evaluation at a hospital after neighbors reported that he was acting strangely. When he went to retrieve his wallet in the home at the request of the police, they said they could smell a strong odor of marijuana. They returned in May with a search warrant and found the plants. Struve and his defense lawyer say that the former MD used marijuana to relieve the effects of glaucoma and mild brain damage that Struve said he suffered after being choked by police in Mississippi years ago. He told the judge that he was grateful for the way that he was treated by the officers, telling the judge this is not like Mississippi. He will be sentenced next month at a plea agreement that he will be on supervised probation in the office's mental health program. His sentence will be an unusual one in New Jersey. Struve is only the second person to be accepted into the Morris County program that seeks to rehabilitate through therapy, counseling, and medication to address psychiatric problems behind the commission of crimes. If the judge accepts the agreement on sentencing day, now set for April 15th, he will be on probation for 5 years. He will have to see a psychiatrist on a regular basis for the entire 5-year period and will agree to accept any medication if the psychiatrist recommends it. When the judge asked the required question whether he was truly guilty and understands the consequences of his guilty plea to possession of marijuana, he answered with an enthusiastic guilty as sin. He said he is clean now and no longer indulges in his once 30 joint a day habit.
Wow. All right. Well, first of all, checking out NORML.org site on New Jersey state laws, 50 or more plants is a felony with a possible 10 to 20 years. And that's a mandatory minimum sentence. So this guy's getting 10 years in prison. Sorry, I've heard that, she said something about this diversion or whatever, but if he's going to be charged in the state courts there, does not look good. $300,000 fine possible as well. But the thing that strikes me about this story, and first of all, before we go too much further, if he's got, some mental health issues, we really do hope that he gets the therapy and the medical attention that he needs. That's not something to joke about. But I do resist that notion of, we're going to pump him full of pills. He has to take any sort of pill we give him. That's problematic to me. But here, he's growing 58 plants in his home in New Jersey. He's been growing since 1968. This guy's been growing weed as long as I've been alive. Okay. And he grew when he came back from, where did he come back from, Carrie? What was that part?
Well, the Army in 1968, one can assume he was in Vietnam.
Vietnam, yeah. All right. So he's got to have been 19, 20 years old when he was there. So he's 20 years older than me. He's 60. He's in his 60s here. What good do we do if indeed he ends up getting locked up? What good do we do locking this guy up? Obviously he's been growing and using weed for 40 years or so here, 43 years. And has any harm befallen society because of him doing this? It sounds like he doesn't have a criminal record. He wasn't causing problems in society. Sure, maybe he was smoking 30 joints a day and not getting much done, but that's not a crime to be slothful or lazy. Oh, man, cases like this just always reiterate how desperately we need to end marijuana prohibition, that we'd want to lock this guy up for growing houseplants and smoking weed is ridiculous.
Hawaii's state legislature voted this week to pass the 5 medical marijuana-related bills onto the House. Senate Bill 58 would increase the amount of medical marijuana a patient may possess from the current limit of 3 ounces and 7 plants, with only 3 mature, to 5 ounces of usable marijuana and 10 plants. The bill would also protect a patient's confidentiality, increase patient-caregiver ratios, and address issues regarding the transportation of medical marijuana. Another bill, Senate Bill 113, that was passed and moved on to the House, House provides for a 3-year research program of medical marijuana. The program would be conducted in Hawaii and would involve qualified researchers and local medical marijuana patients. Senate Bill 175 shifts the authority of the medical marijuana program from the Department of Public Safety to the Department of Health. And Senate Bill 1458 that would create 3 levels of classes for the purpose of licensing. One for dispensaries, which are called compassion centers in the bill language, one for cultivation centers, and one for cannabis-infused edible sales. And lastly, on Senate Bill 1460, a decriminalization bill that makes a civil violation for intentional or knowing possession of an ounce or less of marijuana with a fine no more than $100. Senate Bill 1460 would also revise a statute that requires teachers, employers, or other educational officials to make a report to police if a student is caught with less than an ounce of marijuana. They no longer have that requirement. They would still be required to make an official report for a long list of other crimes such as weapons, sexual offenses, murder, threats of terrorism, and others, along with the possession of more than an ounce of marijuana. Another revising statute was to amend the definition of a detrimental drug to exclude less than an ounce of marijuana. That revision affects a couple of different statutes, such as charges for distributing a detrimental drug in the 3rd degree. That will now change from distributing any marijuana to distributing more than an ounce of marijuana. All 5 Senate bills were widely supported in the Senate. The increase in medical marijuana limits and the decriminalization bills were passed unanimously, 24-0. Shifting the jurisdiction of the medical marijuana program only got 1 dissenting vote, and the 3-year research program only got 2 dissenting votes. So an overwhelmingly positive outcome for all 5 of Hawaii's cannabis reform bills by the Hawaiian Senate. The Democrat-controlled House has assigned several different committees to review the bills, so now is the time to contact your state representative if you live in Hawaii, or contact any friends or family if they live in Hawaii, and make them aware of this impending legislation.
Yeah, this was a total slam dunk. I mean, 5 for 5 is good in sports, but 5 for 5 on marijuana bills in a legislature is just outstanding. And the big story to this, I believe, is those votes. You know, there's 25 members of the Hawaii Senate. The decriminalization ounce, 24-0. There was one guy who was excused. Increasing the number of plants and all that for medical, 24-0. One guy was excused. Creating or moving the program from public safety, which is basically law enforcement, to the Department of Health. Imagine that. Medical marijuana controlled by a health department, like it is in every other state. That was a 24-1. The 1458, that was the compassion centers, another 24-1. And the cannabis research program, really weird. The cannabis research program is the one that got the most opposition, 23-2. Just to study something. Yeah, go ahead and sell weed. Go ahead and have weed, but by God, don't study it. What? That makes no sense to me. But some other notes from this. These are some little parts that I picked out of these bills, took a look at them. The 1460s, the decrim, $100 fine for an ounce or less, right? Even for healthy people. Senate Bill 58, the increase, it adds some stuff that we have in Oregon. It adds the transfer for no consideration clause, like what we have here in Oregon, where one card holder can freely give medicine or plants to another card holder. Very useful for getting access to patients there. It adds some transportation fixes, because Hawaii's got a problem no other medical marijuana state has. It's islands, right? You can't just drive from one to the other. You got to get on a boat or a plane, and oftentimes that involves, more scrutiny than when you're just dealing with a car. So they added some protections for that. Reimbursement for expenses for caregivers added in this bill. Something, again, that Oregon has that allows the growers to get reimbursed for their electricity utilities and all that.
That's great.
Yeah, that's going to really help. The plant limits, I love that they got rid of the stupid distinction between mature and immature. They're going from 3 mature, 4 mature to just 10. 10 plants.
That's
whatever
great.
They are, 10 plants. Great. 1 ounce to 5 ounces, still not enough ounces.
No.
But, 5 times more than you had is better than, 0 times, right? So should be 24 or more, but all right. This is one that's really interesting. It specifies that a doctor that signs for medical cannabis does not have to be the patient's primary care physician. Just the opposite direction that some other states are going, trying to say, it needs to be we need to shut down these doctor shops, where people can get their cards. Here they're kind of saying, no, we want that.
Right.
We want to have specialists doing that. Yeah. That's great. And here's an interesting one. I would love to see. There's part of me that likes this and part of me that doesn't like it, because there's one side, I like more data. I want to know data, right? But this part says, specifies that a doctor need only attest to the fact that a patient has a qualifying condition and shall not actually name or describe the condition in the registration. The doctor basically says you qualify, but he doesn't have to say that you have cancer or AIDS or pain or nausea or whatever. So, all those, when our opponents come out and say, well, only 2% of the people who get medical marijuana really have cancer or AIDS, they won't be able to do that because all they'll know is how many patients they have, not what they got.
Yeah.
Now, that's cool on one side. The other side of me is like, but I want the data. I like data. And another little thing in this Senate Bill 58, it changes the word marijuana to cannabis everywhere in the law. That's cool. And allows a caregiver to take care of 3 patients, whereas before they're only allowed to take care of 1 patient. So that's good news as well. The other bills, the dispensary bill thing is really amazing. We'll talk a little bit more about these in hour 2. We'll get some details, or you can check it out on the blog, stash.normal.org.
In the meantime, I think it's time for a break.
I definitely think it's time for a break. We're hanging out here in Rolla J Studios, and we'll just take a break here with our guests, and we'll be back after this.
It's 20 after the hour, and we have to take a short break, if you know what I mean. Please support these sponsors who support NORML Show Live.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
USVI NORML go broke down barrier. Herb is medicine to broke down barrier. Boost the economy and broke down barrier. It's helping other states broke down barrier. Cannabis for legalized to broke down barrier. Join and speak your voice broke down barrier. We gonna change the law broke down barrier. We got to educate broke down barrier. Yeah, this is Nayora, bigging up USVI NORML. Working to legalize cannabis, for the whole of the Virgin Islands.
USVI NORML is a non-profit organization working to legalize cannabis for the use by the industries and responsible adults. Do your part. Join USVI NORML. Register to vote. Pass the word. Voice your opinion. You can change the law. Contact us for more information at 340-244-9179. You can also visit our website at www.usvinorml.org.
High in the Rockies, for the first time ever, High Times is hosting the Medical Cannabis Cup in the Mile High City, Denver, Colorado. Come to the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup. There'll be cultivation seminars with High Times editors Danny Danko and Nico Escondido, plus other experts and cannabis celebrities. Attend activism seminars with leaders of the medical marijuana movement, including advice on how to start your own canna business. Meet industry leaders in medical cultivation, hydroponics, smokable glassware, hemp products, dispensary supply, cannabis accessories, and more. Plus, Medical Cannabis Cups will be awarded to the best indicas, sativas, concentrates, and edibles entered by legally operating medical marijuana dispensaries and growing collectives. And don't forget Saturday night when the Medical Cannabis Cup will host the extravaganza with surprise musical guests. The High Times Medical Cannabis Cup, April 2nd and 3rd, 2011 at Exto in Denver, Colorado. Visit medcancup.com for details. Be part of the growing cannabis industry. Come to the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup in Denver.
It's time for your daily Toker Tunes, the best in 420 friendly music from all genres that uplifts, entertains, and informs the public. Today we bring you tunes for Groovin' Thursday. Our salute to all the dopest beats and killer rhymes that we find in the best of rap, hip-hop, soul, R&B, and funk. Brought to you by the John Doe Radio Show in Denver, Colorado. Accurate and informative marijuana reform news and entertainment. Available on the THC Media Network and JohnDoeRadio.com. If you'd like to submit your song to be played on NORML Show Live, send it to us at stash@normal.org. Now here's some more great independent marijuana music for today's Daily Toker Tunes.
John Doe here with your Groovin' Thursday tune on NORML Show Live. This tune that I bring you today is from a few artists that I've brought to you before on Normal Show Live. Pace One and Mr. Green. You maybe remember the other tune that I've played for you, Children Cry. I think maybe we've even had possibly other tunes on the stash, but either way, I know the John Doe Radio Show has picked up plenty of these guys' tunes because they are that classic one MC, one DJ combo that is hip-hop. Hip-hop has been lost, sort of, I guess you could say, over the past decade or so. That true talent of artists just sitting down and writing rhymes, their own poetry, and then making the music behind it, when in turn it's been sort of the music first rather than writing first. You know what I'm talking about? I'm sure some of you hip-hop heads know exactly what I'm talking about. This song specifically, though, one that sort of may jerk your feelers a little bit. We all are familiar with the uprising in Egypt and across the Mideast. If you're familiar with the story of why the uprising happened in Egypt, then this song, and especially the end of this song, will hit you pretty hard. And you'll understand, maybe you yourself as a revolutionary, why it's important that we learn from history so that we don't have to repeat it. Great tune. Song is called, if I can bring it up here, it's been a jumbled past few weeks, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry for missing so much. I'm so glad to be back. By the way, I forgot to mention that. You guys rock. I missed you so much. A little groveling there. Appreciate y'all. Thank you, Russ and Ganja John, also for covering during that time and giving us the promotion during that time. It is much appreciated. I can't wait to see what unfolds here in the future. All right, enough of that. Pace One and Mr. Green, Can You Hear Me? Tribute to the people of Tunisia. You heard it right here on Groovin' Thursday, Normal Show Live. I am John Doe. Until we meet again Monday. See ya.
There's nothing but leisure since that soul. Let's talk about the seizure of Tunisia. The people had their voices heard, rulings in their reach. They can change for the better and have freedom of speech. Change the way that non-believers think, the way they teach. The prime ministers replaced, the presidents impeached. Signing into Twitter's the only way to hear the truth. People can't take a stand cause there's snipers on the roof. But where'd they get those guns from? Is there a chance that the government there somehow got them from France, which used to occupy there? Tunisia was the colony. They used its resources to boost their economy and threaten the people there with jail time and sodomy. Instead of being fair and running a legal lottery, instead of sharing the wealth to keep the people quiet, they'd rather keep the money and make the people riot. What's the science? From college, work hard and be smart, but the government there will still confiscate your card like you graduated from Harvard. They're hunted by some murderers that want to take your money and eat all your burgers up, make you a burglar, telling you don't try to be an entrepreneur cause the tax is so high that you set yourself on fire. The ambulance goes by pretending they don't see you, and the people they won't cry, but the people they do see you. The people they will rebel. The people want heaven, but the government wants hell. A government like the mafia thinking it's so easy till a hero comes along like Muhammad Bouazizi and uses his education to give his life a boost. All he was selling was vegetables and juice, but the government doesn't really think that they can tax it. That's why the earth is spinning lopsided on its axis. Tragic.
Bouazizi could not have known that his desperate act would trigger a wave of protest across the North African state. The graduate was forced to sell vegetables on the street to make a living, but police repeatedly confiscated his produce, saying he didn't have the proper permit. On December 17th, he doused himself in petrol and set himself alight in front of a government building in the town of Sidi Bouzid. He died in hospital on Tuesday evening. Within days of his attempted suicide, unrest erupted across the country as people took to the streets in anti-government protests. Police and demonstrators clashed, leaving 3 dead and dozens injured. Images of many of the demonstrations were caught on amateur video. The latest clashes were on Monday. Security forces fired tear gas to disperse a march in the western town of Tella. Demonstrators responded by setting fire to the ruling party's local headquarters.
You want a copy of that song for your iPod? Check out the Daily Toker Tunes at the Stash blog by surfing to stash.normal.org and choosing Media, and then Toker Tunes from the main menu.
Starfish Designs, makers of the original Gandalf.
I'm Radical Russ, and when I want to relax, I always have my 17-inch long original Gandalf from Starfish Designs nearby. The hand-blown borosilicate glass is strong and easy to clean, and the design is sleek and sophisticated. Starfish Designs are available from Bend, Oregon at a glass retailer near you. For locations, call 541-788-GLASS. That's 541-788-4527.
Joined also by Barry McCaffrey, General Barry McCaffrey, I should say, retired general, military airlines at NBC, and most importantly for this conversation, former National Drug Policy Director, very familiar with this conversation.
NORML Show Live, where the truth about marijuana gets more than a minute to speak.
General, I'm going to begin with you.
Everybody's got a habit, some good, some bad, to reach the comfort zone. Some people have all kinds of people around, some people can't hang alone. Whatever it is, whatever you like, you're gonna make it feel right.
One of the most disturbing elements of the war on marijuana is how it's made police the enemy of otherwise law-abiding cannabis consumers. Fortunately, one group of police officers knows firsthand the futility of the drug war and reaches out to the community and to current law enforcement to end our war on drugs through legalization. It's time now to speak to one such officer in our continuing look at law enforcement against prohibition.
All right, really excited to get to this next interview because we get the opportunity to have a guest live in studio here in Portland, Oregon at Rolla J Studios. We're visiting with Shelley Fox Loken. She's with LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and is a former probation and parole officer. Shelley, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. And I was looking at your bio, and of course it mentioned, just like I said, that you're a former probation and parole officer, also said corrections officer as well. How long did you end up working in corrections in the system?
Well, I started in 1979 as a guard at Oregon State Penitentiary and worked there for just a little under 4 years. Mm-hmm. And shortly after that, there was a short break, and then I became a parole and probation officer in Eugene for the next 11 years, so from 85 to 96. And then I was a counselor at a prison over in Ontario, Oregon, for the final 2 years of my career. Mm. So the longest stint was as a parole and probation officer in Eugene, and that's probably the job where I had the most contact with the low-level drug users that we're kind of addressing in our conversation today and with LEAP. We're not necessarily talking about a lot of the people who are in the state prison system a lot.
Right. Now, we're not talking about kingpins. We're talking about, average users.
Right.
Anything from, your typical marijuana consumer to people who might have an addiction problem with meth or coke or something like that.
Right, right. Okay. As well as people who do, the low-level type of delivery that we treat as a high level. We treat it the same way, but it's the friend who goes and helps another friend, and they're the middle person, and they end up with a felony on their record with the potential for a 20-year sentence for a Class A felony.
Yeah. You know, we see a phenomenon that we've often called the girlfriend effect, where women who are wives or girlfriends who are only tangentially involved in the drug trade because they don't have anyone to roll over on, they're the ones who end up doing prison time. You see a lot of them?
Yes, they would get involved oftentimes, though, was my experience, is that they did have some involvement. You know, it would vary as far as how much involvement, but, you know, if they had a partner who was involved, then usually they were too. But they generally paid the highest consequence, which was the loss of their children.
Right.
That, you know, the loss of liberty is a serious consequence. That's when you put people in jail and put them in prison, but then compound that with the loss of their children. You're talking about some pretty serious consequences for some pretty mild transgressions.
Yeah.
Or at least I would think, and definitely even back then even saw them as mild transgressions, even though I had to uphold the law. Yeah. As I was sworn to do.
That's right. And one thing that we hear a lot when we start talking about probation and parole is just how probation officers are incredibly overworked. Their caseloads are just massive. Did you ever feel like you weren't able to give attention to someone who's in serious need of oversight, like a violent criminal or robber or something, because you were just swamped by these low-level drug cases?
Absolutely. And in fact, the department ended up dealing with those kinds of situations in a crisis mode as best they could. They would try and separate out the more serious offenders and put them with people who would have smaller caseloads, and then they would take the low-level offenders, such as the marijuana possessors or even the people who've done the low-level distribution type of situations, and they put them in what was called a case bank, which basically means that they're not being supervised anyway. So we're basically just eating up a lot of resources, and we're causing a great deal of hardship on these people. It's costing them more money. It's taking away from their families and what they can contribute. And we're just playing games with them, basically, really. I mean, when you put them in case bank, their only requirement is that they turn in a piece of paper to you once a month. That's it. And pay their fines, do that kind of thing. But, you know, most of those people are going to be successful no matter what you do. The court didn't need to put them on probation. The court is wasting the resources of the state by putting them on probation, and they're not being supervised anyway because the court knows and the Department of Corrections knows that they don't need those resources.
Yeah.
So that's the way our state, at least at the time that I was working there, had chosen to deal with it for the most part. That was changing when I left, mostly because it was no longer going to be a state agency, parole and probation. It went down to the county level. Okay. So now each county is dealing with it differently, and I can't speak to exactly how they're dealing with it, but I do know that we have, especially people locked up in our county jails. I think we're taking up a lot of space in our county jails, much more so than with our state prisons in Oregon, for, again, the lower level user and even distributor.
We're speaking with Shelley Fox-Loken from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, a former parole and probations correction officer here in the state of Oregon. And let's talk about the effect on the people you were supervising and the revolving door and the cycle that gets involved here. Once someone is caught for marijuana possession, they end up in your office. How hard is it to break that cycle and get back into leading a productive life?
Well, I think that was one of the most discouraging things I ever saw when I was working as a parole and probation officer. It became clear to me fairly soon after I started working there that our expectations of this population were higher than they would be for somebody who had, you know, a good middle-class paying job with nothing against them, has good transportation, has a good house, has a good family, has all the support systems they need. And we expect less out of that person than we do out of this person on probation. This person on probation is expected to go out and find a job, even though now they have a felony criminal conviction on their record, right, which, you know, makes it much more difficult for them. And not only then do they have to go out and find a job, they're expected to pay fines. And in addition to the fines, they're expected to pay what's called a supervision fee for the privilege of being on supervision.
Sure.
That was implemented during the time that I was there. I was there before and after, and it was disastrous. There was all kinds of justification used for it. The biggest one was that it was good for them. There's just no honesty in government. Let's at least, be honest and say, okay, we just want the money.
Right.
But we spend so much money collecting it, I don't know how worthwhile it was, but evidently they figure that it's worthwhile. But it isn't worthwhile to the individual client, who then also is supposed to be paying their child support, who has transportation needs in order to keep their job. And so, it's just that we expect so much. And then on top of all of that, they may, especially if they're a drug offender, they have to go to drug treatment once or twice a week, and 3 or 4 AA or NA meetings on top of that per week. So up to 6 evenings a week, this person is expected to be doing things to comply with their supervision. And then on top of that, they may even have a community service obligation or a weekend in jail obligation or any number of other obligations set by the court. And it just isn't at all surprising to me when people fail, when we set them up with too high of expectations. Now, I did have one client who had just the craziest conditions I had ever seen. He was an out-of-state client. He came from somewhere back east. I don't even remember what state it was. And he had the hardest probation I had ever seen, and it was a 10-year probation.
Wow.
And it was for distributing peyote at a Grateful Dead concert. And now, he did well. He did very well. He complied with all of his conditions, and he ended up becoming a drug and alcohol counselor. But he came from a rich family, and he had a lot going for him, and he had a lot of support systems, and he didn't have all the troubles that most of these other people have when they come into the system. You have to remember, who are the people who get arrested for crimes of possession or even distribution? Generally, if it's not the kingpins, if it's not the high-level bust that you see in the newspapers with the huge amounts of drugs, generally it's poor people, because poor people live out on the streets. Okay, poor people are more out there. They don't have the big homes with 2 acres of land where they can have their parties and be quiet and the neighbors don't call anybody, okay? Mm-hmm. They got the neighbors, they live in an apartment with the neighbors next door, and they get a little out of hand, and the cops are there and smelling the marijuana smoke or the marijuana growing or what have you. And I think that at least contributes to why we see a lot more poor people who even just get arrested, why cops are in those neighborhoods more, because they're out there, they're visible, they're seen. That's where the activity is. That's not happening in those other neighborhoods. And then, of course, we have, the issues of people not having good legal representation because they're poor, and if they're people of color and they have biases going into the system against them for that. I mean, we definitely have seen every person I know who works in law enforcement has to admit that they see a disproportionate number of minorities in the system.
Stats don't lie.
Right. And it's mostly drugs.
Yeah.
It's almost all drugs. It's not the crimes of violence and the sex crimes and those other crimes. That's where the disproportionate numbers come in. And that's an enforcement issue. That's a discretion issue. Mm-hmm. That's where we have control over how we as a society choose to deal with these issues. Do we want to keep locking up these people basically just because they're poor and don't have adequate places to hide what everybody else is doing?
Yeah.
Because they are.
They are. You're absolutely right. With your background in probation parole, and of course we both agree that legalization is the ultimate solution to these problems, but let's take for granted that it may not happen as soon as we'd like.
Okay.
What can we do in the interim to reform parole, probation, to really help these people instead of what you've described where we set the bar so high they're bound to fail?
Oh, that's a good question that I wasn't entirely prepared for. But I was interested in listening to some of the things that you were talking about in Hawaii.
Yeah.
The one piece that I picked up on, and I don't know if this if I heard it incorrectly or not, but it sounded to me like you said something about somebody being put on probation to the mental health department. That's unique, and that would be different. Now, the origination of parole or of probation was back in, I think it was the 1700s. I could be wrong on that. Maybe the 1600s. But basically, it was a man who was before a magistrate in England for stealing something. He was very poor. It was a food item he was stealing. And the judge was going to throw him in the prison, which in those times were really horrible. Mm-hmm. And somebody in the court stood up and said, I will take responsibility for this man. He will come with me, and I will teach him how to take care of himself, and he won't be back here in front of this judge again. He will not commit crimes again. And that's how probation originated. The judge said, fine, I release him to your custody. You're in charge of him. You're there to help him. That's how probation was originally designed to be. Since the war on drugs, probation has become much more of a law enforcement arm, and almost exclusively so, in my opinion. When I first began with parole and probation in 1985, all of us talked about, we wore two hats, the counselor hat and the cop hat. And both were equally important. As time went on, the cop hat became the predominant hat. There's I'm sure a number of explanations for it. My observations, maybe partly because I come from a feminist perspective, is there's a lot of boys liking to play with their toys. Mm-hmm. You know, it's the guns and it's the big trucks and it's the breaking down the doors, and they like it. Yeah. It's fun. And a lot of the women who were signing up got off on it too. I mean, that whole adrenaline rush, they just like it. Mm-hmm. And they like playing cowboy. And I worked with a lot of police officers. They like to use my search condition, and we would go in and search my clients, and they wouldn't have to go get a warrant because, right. and then we would go in and we would bust them, and they loved it, and I could watch them, and they'd get all pumped up, and I would too, but then they'd overstep themselves and do anyway. To get back to your question. What can we do? I think we need to go back to what probation was originally designed to do, which is to be more of a social worker with the capacity to hold people accountable through putting them in jail. That was the purpose of being able to do that. Right. Okay, it's just for an accountability. It's okay. We have to deal with this. But that's about probation. Marijuana users need not to be on probation. Right. Period. They just take up a lot of resources in this state and in every other state. Marijuana distributors, those laws need to be reworded to where at least people who are just helping out a friend or maybe kind of medicinal but not, and there needs to be more leeway in the law.
It's great to hear you say that, and I love talking to you. We've got Hour 2 Toker Talk Radio coming on. If you want to stick around, we can talk some more in the second hour. You bet. We've got to go to our next call coming up here. We're going to be speaking with Cher Neufer from Ohio NORML, and we'll talk to her about what's going on in Lodi. This is NORML Show Live. We're back right after this.
76% of Americans no longer support arresting and jailing marijuana smokers, and nearly as many support the medical patients having access to medical marijuana. And over 80% of our citizens now believe the war on drugs is an ineffective failure. So the question is, when will the government's misguided war on adult marijuana smokers finally end? When? Simple. When you and your like-minded friends, family, and coworkers get involved with an organization such as the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, also known as NORML. My name is Keith Stropp, and I founded the organization in 1970. Contact us at NORML, toll-free, 888-67-NORML, or by visiting the organization's up-to-date webpage at www.norml.org.
As
As High Times Senior Cultivation Editor, I'm often called into the field and asked to sample or even identify exotic strains of marijuana in their natural habitat. Now, for the first time, I've compiled more than 120 of my favorite strains into this single field guide designed to fit into your pocket as you travel the world in search of your favorite plant. From a friend's closet grow room to the wilds of Northern California, this single guide covers all of today's best-known strains, plus heirlooms and throwbacks, including High Times quality photos and information on each variety's genetic heritage and growing characteristics, plus my personal notes on aroma, flavor, and potency. So this is Danny Danko, author of the official High Times Field Guide to Marijuana Strains, wishing you good times and great ganja.
Do you really want to legalize marijuana? Prove it. Join NORML today at NORML.org, and your donation will help us spread the growing truth about cannabis. Free speech ain't free, you know.
Free the ganja tree, it's the healing of the nation. Free the Cali weed, good for meditation. Free the pot smokers, they renounce the lie. Lighting up the chalice, they keep no malice. Free the marijuana, come on, say. Free the marijuana, hear me, say. Free the marijuana, come on, say. Free the marijuana.
The effects of marijuana prohibition are felt by all Americans in every walk of life, regardless of race, creed, color, religion, social status, wealth, gender, sexual orientation, or even one's use or non-use of marijuana. As the marijuana smokers lobby, NORML hears the stories of these average Americans and brings them to the attention of our policymakers and our fellow citizens in this segment we call NORML Newsmakers.
Well, there's an interesting story that we're going to bring to you here, coming out of Ohio. For a long time, Ohio NORML's been working there, and before that, they were North Ohio NORML, and they've got a store in the small town of Lodi that's been there for quite a long time. It's been kind of a neighborhood fixture, and everybody's been very, very tolerant of it. But as of late, there's been kind of a battle with the mayor there, who's got some interesting problems with the store. And joining us here to discuss it is the executive director of Ohio NORML, Cher Neuffer. Cher, welcome to the show.
Hi, Russ.
So good to talk to you. And how's everything in Lodi today?
Well, I just rushed home from the dreaded NORML store that's in Lodi.
Well, I was trying to give people a little bit of the background on this, about how long it's been around and all. Tell folks about the store and what it sells and what's going on.
Okay, well, we've been there for 10 years. And I remember the first year was really interesting because the Akron Beacon Journal did a whole 2-page section on us. They came out, and it was on the local, not the front page of the paper, but the front page of the local section, And they were referring to it as, oh, this NORML store is in like a Barney Fife community, So that was really interesting. Well, that lasted for like 7 years, and we got a new mayor 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this new mayor, of course, he's aware the store was there. When he first was inducted there, when he was first elected, did he mention it or have any problem with it?
No, it didn't start until, actually, it was 13 months ago now, right? February.
Yeah.
When he first did his first comment. And that happened because we had a gathering outside of the courthouse for 2 elderly medical patients. They were like around 60 years old. The guy was on dialysis, and he was busted for growing a couple of plants. And so we went there in front of the courthouse with our Stop Arresting Medical Marijuana Patients signs. And both of the newspapers did articles on it. And then one of our board members sent in an LTE, which is on I just brought up your original one from over a year ago, February a year ago, and what was said in her LTE, and then the mayor responded, getting all flipped out about us having that shop at.
So we have the mayor and one of the Ohio NORML people battling it out in the letters to the editor page, basically.
That's when it started over a year ago.
Wow. And so how has this escalated now?
Well, we hadn't heard anything now for a whole year. And all of a sudden, this just came out of the clear blue. I don't know if the mayor contacted the paper and wanted to put it in there, or if the Post just decided that they wanted to interview him, and that's something that was, I don't know. It just all of a sudden out of the clear blue, this new article, Lodi's normal relations take a hit, that just came out of the blue. It's been over a year now.
And what did this new article have to say? What did the mayor say in this?
Well, basically the same thing that he said over a year ago, that this store is not good. Its proximity, to a public park, which is basically the square. It's the town square. It's not really a park per se. We do have a park about a quarter mile down or down the street where it goes, where the river runs through, and they have swings and stuff for kids, all the barbecue stuff and all that. That's not near our store. This is just the central park. So basically what he's saying is that he found it objectionable that we had any of that information in a public publication.
So it's the what about the children argument. Oh, my God, there's children playing in the parks. We can't talk about legalizing weed.
Right, but there's really no children that play in the square.
Okay.
We do see once in a while some older, not quite 18-year-old teenagers trying to sneak some cigarettes. And they did put an ice rink in this winter for about a month, which was really nice. We were actually, I went over to City Hall and said, this is great, something for the kids to do around here, because there's nothing to do out here.
Right.
Okay, but nobody hardly ever used it. The only time we saw anyone there was like in the evening, and then after dark, because they had it lit up, there were teenagers playing hockey on it.
Right, okay.
So don't really have, there are kids, I'm sure, that walk past our store on the sidewalk, and you have to admit that.
Now, are people under 18 allowed in the store? Is it all ages thing?
Our store sign says 17.
Okay.
We felt when we did this that they are getting ready to become a voting age, and since we don't sell pipes or anything like that in that store, that for information on marijuana, cannabis, hemp, etc., that they should start getting educated. So we have 2 racks of literature for people they can take. And then, of course, we sell our normal shirts and normal Huggies and normal, all kinds of stuff that says normal on it, lighter, you name it.
Right. So it's not a smoke shop. It's not, you're not, dealing a bunch of pipes and bombs and stuff. Yeah.
We're not a head shop, no. Now, we do have papers. Okay, but then the gas station sells papers.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So his...
No, we don't have pipes and all that other stuff, whatever.
So his contention here is just the existence of a normal store with, promotional items like T-shirts and stickers and such, and literature on the facts about cannabis is bad for the children.
Yes, and books. And we also sell incense and other kind of clothing, just kind of cool clothing that,
sure.
Stuff like that. Yeah, candles, that helps us raise money.
Now, does the mayor's...
we do sell some drug testing products.
Okay. Is the mayor's attitude common in the town of Lodi or the people, or is he way off base here as far as the people are concerned?
Well, as far as the business community in our town square, we are friends with at least 90% of them.
Okay.
I am sure that there are some parents in our area, in the Cloverleaf School District, whatever, that don't like it. I'm sure there are some. After we opened, we hardly... Okay, let me tell you first. Yesterday I went to City Hall to ask if I walked in, and the ladies all there know us, they're all real nice, and I asked her if I needed to fill out the Freedom of Information Act form. I wanted to know if there were any complaints filed about our store. Well, the lady that's in charge of that kind of stuff came up in the back, and she goes, no, we haven't had anything. You don't have to fill out any form. And then I just kind of smiled at them. I said, I'm sure you guys know what this is all about, and they all kind of laughed. But the barbershop next to us will take our product that gets delivered there if we're not there. The ceramic lady that gives classes, she loves us. She can't stand the mayor. The both pizza parlors are real happy with us. The tobacco store across the street, they love us. So the majority of the businesses there have no problem with us. There may be some families, because I remember 3 or 4 years ago, because we're always in a parade. Lodi has the largest parade and festival in the county other than the Medina County Fair. And we were in the parade, and someone wrote an LTE and saying they'll never take their children again because we were in the parade and we had this big banner that had a marijuana leaf on it.
So it's really just the symbolism and the culture war part that we're talking about here. It's not any harm to the children. It's just reactionaries here that are opposed to your mission.
Right, and we try to be we know this, so like when we're in the parade, we make our float very conservative. We have like hemp for fuel, food, medicine, we make sure everything's really nice. But yes, we did have one banner saying 800,000 people arrested, whatever, and it did have like a marijuana leaf on it. So we do try to make sure it's toned very conservatively when we do those things, but sometimes I keep thinking that what's wrong if we have a cannabis leaf? I keep thinking what is so bad about that? But now when we're in the parade, 80% of the people are cheering, giving us the sign, all that. But then you have those.
Oh, sorry about that, Sherry. I think we've lost you on the connection. I apologize for that, but thanks for telling us all about what's happening there in Lodi with Ohio NORML. It's happening in towns all over this country when reformers want to try to get the message out. The specter of what about the children is brought up, and we're glad that you're fighting the good fight and putting out a good image for the reformers out there. We thank you so much for doing that. And thanks for joining us here on NORML Show Live. For Ganja John and Cannabis Carrie, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. We're going to go into hour 2 here. Shelley Fox Loken is hanging out with us from LEAP. We'll take some of your calls at 971-533-7111. And we got more details on the Hawaii bills, plus some other fluffy news for you. Stay tuned for hour 2. For those of you listening to the podcast, thanks. We'll be back tomorrow with more news and interviews you can use for the cannabis community. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is NORML Show Live, the voice of the Marijuana Nation.
Take it on one more time. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you